All right, here we go. Believe in Texans. I'm Seth Payne, new addition to the show, former Houston Texan with, of course, Cecil Shorts, former Houston Texan. But fun fact about both of us: we were both drafted in the fourth round by the Jacksonville Jaguars back in the day, and then ended up making our way over to Houston.
Crazy.
Yeah, which we're connected somehow.
Literally like the 114th pick, like both of us, the same exact pick.
I
Were you
didn't.
what?
You know
What?
what?
Yeah, the exact same pick. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't. I always have to fact check myself on that. People ask,
It's
more
crazy.
people know when exactly I was drafted than I remember myself. It was all, you got drafted back when things were covered way more thoroughly. It was
Mm,
still, I wasn't that far removed from just the NFL being something, the draft being something they just kind of threw together.
I
So
got
you're a modern NFL player. Cecil and I have been watching the Texans training camp, and the Texans defense has just been phenomenal. The offense has had fits and starts. They've had some promising moments. I think the biggest thing right now that's got everybody in a tizzy is the fact that Ian Rappaport reported on the NFL Network that Joe Mixon will be out for the duration of training camp, which isn't a typically a huge deal. He doesn't play a lot in the preseason regularly, but he's in a walking boot, and his foot injury doesn't seem to have recovered. Does this come to it's a shock to you at all, Cecil?
it's not a shock. I am nervous about it though because Joe was the heart and soul of the offense last year. Like if you could depend on anybody, it was Nico Collins, right? But Nico had some injuries too. But when Joe was in there and before he went down with the horse collar that should have been called, that actually wasn't a horse collar, or it was a horse
The
collar,
hip
but it
drop.
wasn't called. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was the heart and soul of that offense. So you need him to be in that backfield now. And I don't know how much the depth is. I'm not sold on Nick Chubb. I love Woody Marks. But then there's Darway and then there's Dameon Pierce, but Dameon Pierce on the pup list. So
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned right now. Give me your thoughts.
I think, well, this is typically I would say, hey, it's running back. You can pick somebody up anywhere. I feel like we're scarred a little bit because we've watched this offensive line the last couple years basically create situations where Joe Mixon last year had to have a superhuman effort to get to the line of scrimmage or just to avoid shrapnel in the backfield just to get 2 or 3 yards. I'd like to think that, man, if they get the offensive line in order, if Cole Popovich, the offensive line coach, and Nick Caley, the new offensive coordinator, are the real deal, that you can get by for at least a few games with backup running backs. That's how most of the teams in the league do it. It's just hard. It's hard right now. It's hard to believe it until we see it that these guys can do it. And then you mentioned Nick Chubb coming off that injury. You had a similarly catastrophic knee injury where you tore multiple tendons/ligaments, and that's what Nick Chubb had a couple years ago. He didn't look like his old self when he played last year, and it was a heroic effort for him to even come back and play at all, especially on a bad football team. But so far in camp, he hasn't. I don't think he's looked awful, but I don't think he's looked like his old self. So that's where how optimistic are you that he can overcome that injury really for the second time in his career because he had a bad one in college as well?
Seth, you said it's the second time that there's multiple ligaments involved. I'm not sure if it's the same knee or not. Um, But the closer you get to 30 and how banged up he's been and how many carries he's gotten in Cleveland, like he got tons of carries because he was the offense and carrying the offense in Cleveland. I'm not I get why you bring him in if Joe Mixon is your guy, but for him to be your bell cow, I don't see it being good. I
Yeah.
just don't see anything good happening. He doesn't have the same burst, doesn't have the same speed, and it's different for myself a receiver where I depend on my legs. I'm not getting hit in my legs as much as he is. He's a horse, like he's a tree trunk at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
So DBs, corners, even linebackers, they're going to be hitting him in his lower extremities. So I just don't see it working out in a way that we all would hope it would be. But I could see a situation where if Joe is back healthy, he can be the short yardage guy. He can come spell him. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Woody Marks can do. And I
Hmm.
think, what can Dameon Pierce do? This might be his last hoorah. If you're asking me, this is the last hoorah to prove he can do something. You kind of got a redo with Nick Caley coming in his offense. Can he fit the mid zone? Can he fit what they're trying to do here in this scheme? So it's going to be interesting, but I'm just not sold on Nick Chubb being that guy.
Well, and Jawar Jordan has been doing really well so
Oh,
far
I
in
forgot
camp.
about him.
Yeah, well, the thing about him is, I mean, he's smaller than Stephon Diggs. He's about 5'11", 180 pounds. And but if all you need him is for a few games here and there, and he's not going to be your bell cow, I mean, immediately as soon as I say 5'11", 180, I think somebody's probably going to say, hey, that's what Warwick Dunn was, right? Yeah, Warwick Dunn was the extreme exception. But the biggest thing that I'm optimistic about with Woody Marks is that, hey, the Texans traded up to get him. I think they very much want to add the running back receiving threat where it's not just a check down. He's an actual threat, and that's something that makes it easier for CJ Stroud. And even if you don't have a workhorse running back there, if Joe Mixon's injured for a game or two, if Dameon Pierce, who's currently on the PUP list, isn't available, that you can mix and match your way to some pretty effective offense. It's not the dream and it's not the ideal. I just I almost didn't even want to ask you about the knee injury because I know I know that you know from experience how hard it is to come back from that when you're in your 30s. And Joe Mixon had said some stuff in the offseason about how he felt great and he was back up to all his old weights in the weight room and everything. And I had multiple knee injuries, and I know you can relate to this. There's times where, man, you feel good all off season and you feel great in the weight room and you feel great doing agility drills, but until you actually get there out on the field, you don't realize, oh, I'm not the same guy I used to be.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part. I also think mentally, like mentally, are you prepared to be able to go out there and trust your knee again? Like this is
Yeah.
Nick Chubb's second multiple ligament knee injury. So can he go out there and trust himself again and make that hard cut without thinking about it? Can take a hit and you're on the ground like, okay, can I get up? Am I okay? Like it's just so many thoughts that goes on with it. It's gonna be hard. But to piggyback on that Woody Marks thing real quick, he's in a situation where he could be, and they're going to use him in multiple different formations, multiple different personnel groupings. You can use him in a way that can really help your offense and elevate guys, even like you mentioned, when Joe is out or whatever the case may be. But even if Joe's in there, you can have him and Joe in the field at the same time. He's like another receiver. Like you
Yeah,
can have
yeah.
him, like, you know what I mean? It can be 20 personnel and two backs and those zero tight ends, and he can be in the slide to motion them out. It's a lot of creative things you can do with Joe with Woody
Well,
Marks.
well, and this is what I get excited about with Nick Caley is, hey, he comes from New England and then to the Rams, but then especially whenever I think about Nick Caley being in New England and watching and working with Tom Brady, I think about the way Tom Brady used his running backs, where it was the classic. Look, a check down is not a dirty word as long as you're doing it within the rhythm of the play. And Tom Brady was so good at taking a look downfield, knowing that his options probably weren't going to be great, and then you dump it off to a running back in time, to where he can get the ball in his hands while the linebackers are still getting back in their drops. And then all of a sudden, instead of feeling like you're just like, oh, I got to settle for a check down, they would make it an actual viable threat. And I think that how it is with quarterbacks. Like CJ wants to go deep. He's got that aggressiveness in him. And it's not a matter of intelligence or anything. It's just it's the psychology and the maturing process that young quarterbacks go through, where they have to start living by all the cliches. Don't go broke taking a profit. Take what the defense gives you. All of that. You can be lethal with that strategy if you do it right.
I tell you what, when you were talking about Tom Brady and his running backs, James White came to mind.
Yeah,
Like, oh my gosh, how lethal was he in the passing game? And you got to remember, Joe Mixon can catch out the backfield too. So
yeah.
you have Joe and him as a threat. That's pretty good moving forward.
Okay, so the areas to be concerned about, obviously, we've been talking about the running backs, and one of the reasons that we're concerned about them is because the offensive line last year was so scattershot. They've been mixing and matching a lot. Like last year where it looked like they had their starters chosen on the first day of camp, which seems ridiculous now to think about Kenyon Green just basically being anointed the left guard and Juice Scruggs being anointed the center. Everybody except Titus Howard right now really seems like they're completely wide open in a competition. Titus Howard probably going to play right guard unless somebody doesn't assert themselves at right tackle. So I get excited. I get excited that Will Anderson has looked phenomenal, and yet every time Will Anderson looks phenomenal, it's because he's beating up on a Texans offensive tackle. So talk me out. I'm not really on a ledge. I've actually, I'm you know how you get a kind of delusional the first couple weeks of camp as a player.
Yes.
Like I never went into a season where I didn't think that we could win the Super Bowl, other than 2002. 2002 was the only year where I wasn't convinced that my team was going to win the Super Bowl.
That is funny. I tell you what though, it's hard, and you know this. It's hard to block defensive linemen with no pads on.
Yeah. Yeah,
really hard.
It's really hard. Well, okay. See, I was a run stuffer, and my pass rush move was the bull rush, and that was pretty much it. And then a bull and snatch. So when there were no pads on, I couldn't rush the passer for crap. My entire career was coaches during training camp thinking like, ugh, this is Seth Payne. I don't know about him. And then we get into actual games with actual football contact, and they'd be like, oh, look at that. Seth makes plays when people are actually playing for real. So that's why I get excited about Will, because, Will is a speed to power guy who's been refining and working at adding to his pass rush repertoire. And that's what I get excited about during training camp is when there's no pads on, it's the more finesse stuff, it's his swipes, it's his long arms and all of these other things that I think he's really coming into his own. Ariante Ersery, on the flip side of it, has been playing left tackle. He's been playing right tackle. They seem to be pretty pleased with his progress, and I think the competition at right tackle right now is probably going to be between Blake Fisher, Ariante Ersery, and then when Trent Brown, if and when he comes back, he's coming off a patellar tendon tear. Obviously, he's got a shot at it.
Mm-hmm. I love Ersery. I just love his attitude, and I think that's the biggest thing with this offensive line this year. Is they're looking for the group of guys that's going to fit what Cole Popovich and Nick Caley want, which that aggressive, hard-nosed dog mindset, right?
Yeah.
And one thing I love about Popovich and Nick Caley, they were together in New England, right? And they were under, I think his name is Coach Scar, who's one of the best offensive line coaches to be in the NFL. And they speak the same exact language and look for the same exact people. So I think that's going to help really find the guys they want and help them develop in a big way.
Yeah, Dante Scarnecchia. And I told this story on my YouTube channel a couple days ago. I think the difference between Popovich and last year's coach Chris Strausser is just a simple sense of urgency. And Popovich kind of coaches that same way. But one of my favorite memories from training, from like combined practices in the NFL, was when we practiced against the Broncos I must have been like 2006. It was 2006, I think. It was Kubiak's first year. Alex Gibbs Sr. was there, and he would go on to be an offensive line coach for the Texans. But he was getting it into it with one of their veteran offensive linemen, like a 10-year vet. And it was one of those things that happens in the NFL that if people were mic'd up, people would think it was huge drama because there was a coach and a player just yelling at each other. But it was Alex Gibbs Sr. being just a crusty old son of a bitch and he was tearing into this veteran that I think in a lot of places he might feel like, hey, I'm a made guy, I'm not going to get. And no, Alex Gibbs Sr. was not that guy that was going to let things slide or let guys just be kind of lazy because they're veterans. And I think that's a mentality that's been missing on the offensive line. And you mentioned they've been talking a lot about just, hey, overpowering defenses, double teaming, just old school football. I mean, this offensive line the last couple of years, it's felt like a finesse unit that also didn't happen to be good at the finesse part of it.
It was just bad. Like they couldn't.
Yeah.
When you think finesse, they couldn't be finesse. They couldn't be powerful. And then the leaders in that room, you had to shake it up. So I'm glad they did shake it up. So I'm encouraged. So don't go off the ledge, Seth.
Okay.
Don't go off the ledge. Just be patient and just see how it goes. But you're right. The defense is dominating. Will looks amazing.
When I went off the ledge in the preseason was CJ Stroud with his shoulder soreness. I freaked out, man. And it wasn't for clicks. I wasn't just trying to do it to give hot takes or anything. I was genuinely. You just don't hear about quarterbacks that often just having randomly sore shoulders. But then it turns out, it sounds like from the way he said it was because he'd been working out so hard in the weight room. And then it made me feel a little bit better, but I hope he learned his lesson because did you have Dan Riley as a strength coach?
Nope.
Okay, he was gone before you got here. That was his number one rule. Never get injured in the weight room. And that was for any player. But for the quarterback especially, God help you if a quarterback gets injured in the weight room. So I like that CJ wants to get all yoked up and leaner and everything, but it can't be at the expense of your shoulder being sore.
No, we can't ever hear that again. Like, what are you doing? Now, I'll tell you what. I didn't like him going on his podcast tour last year.
Yeah.
So I'm glad he's like working hard. It's just all right. Now we got to find a balance.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can't
I
be
think
hearing this.
these kids, Cecil, I don't know, man. They seem to get their work in no matter what they're doing. They get together in Hawaii or Spain or wherever else to work out. The DBs went to Puerto Rico this year, and Azeez Al-Shaai went with them. As far as the young wide receivers, I feel like Jayden Higgins and Jaylin Noel they'd be Cecil Shorts guys. Everything I hear about them is that they are just blue collar as hell, love practicing, just into it in a way that a lot of the draft picks have been as of late. And I'm glad that you and I get to talk about this because I try to explain this, and sometimes because I'm a big dumb defensive lineman, I don't do as good a job as somebody like you can.
Ivy League.
The football helped me get in a little bit. With Jaylin Noel playing slot, first of all, I feel good about Christian Kirk as long as he's healthy. But just take me through what it's like learning how to play slot, and especially in an offense like this where you're going to have choice routes and probably hot routes, which were absent from the Texans last year. What's the challenge as a rookie when you're playing in the slot?
Well, I think the hardest part is understanding all that comes with it, right? Because you're in the slot. So you have to, when you come to the line of scrimmage, you look at your triangle. Look at the guy in front of you, which could be a nickel or a linebacker or a safety. Look at the deep safety near you, and then look at the corner to your right or to your left of you. And understand what they want to do, right? And understand what's going on. Because like you said, there's hot routes, there's choice routes, there's option routes in this particular offense. So you got to understand your route changes based on what the defense does. That's why I think it's awesome that Christian Kirk is there. So Noel can take his time, learn it, and then when he's fully ready, whenever that time comes, boom, he can just immerse in it. But it's so much that goes into it. So when you come to the line of scrimmage, look at your triangle. If that safety blitzes, guess what? You have a hot route right now. Like, you got to get your head around, and ball's coming out hot, which is great because, like you mentioned last year, I don't know if I saw any of that or any adjustments.
No!
Any
These guys were, like, looking off in the stands as CJ was getting plastered. It was driving me insane.
What is happening? But you got to be able to get off the press. You got to be able to avoid the linebackers, right? You got to be able to dig out of safety in the running game. You got to be able to dig out of the nickel or the backer sometimes, maybe even motion across and still understand what your responsibility is. It's just so much that goes into it. So for Christian to be there, I think is awesome for Noel. But Noel, it seems like he just loves the game of football.
Yeah.
But I think too, why Casero keeps going back to Iowa State, he loves what Matt Campbell and Iowa State are doing there, right? Look at Xavier Hutchinson, look at Jayden Higgins. He loves what they're grooming there, type of player that they're putting together and developing. So he wants those guys in there. I think that's a huge thing by Nick, finding the right guys to fit the offense. But these guys are workers, man. And Noel, to me, is a Steve Smith type of guy. Once he gets comfortable and more comfortable, I know he made a big play today and scored a touchdown, but he can get more comfortable and comfortable. He's going to be, I think, pretty special.
That's where I always caution myself about getting excited about slot receivers during training camp because they see vanilla coverages, teams aren't game planning for them. And remember, I think Braxton Miller might have been the ultimate example where Braxton Miller looked awesome during camp because they're speedy little guys, and especially if they're going against the 2s and 3s, there's space and there's room to move. And I remember he gave a quote after one of the first games he was out there, and Braxton Miller had a reputation as not necessarily being like a D'Amico Ryan swarm type of guy. And his quote was something like, yeah, you could tell that they'd watched film on me. Like, yeah, you think? It tends to happen. Yeah, welcome to the NFL.
Oh, man.
CJ Stroud would be the last, obviously. It's kind of cool that we haven't talked as much about CJ Stroud, even on the radio with Sean Pendergast in our morning show or anything. And I think part of it is that you understand that the challenges CJ was facing last year were, by and large, things that he couldn't control or was too young to control or didn't have the right offensive coordinator to help control. So I feel very good about him latching onto this offense and everything that Nick Caley wants to do. I guess my one concern would be, man, you don't. If you look at Tom Brady's career, he was not the quintessential Tom Brady until 8, 9, 10 years into his career, where he really had complete command at the line of scrimmage, and he just knew how to dial up everything and make 4 adjustments to the pass protection and the guys' routes. And what's realistic for CJ to learn this offense, and then how quickly can he get up to that point where he is truly in complete command at the line of scrimmage?
Well, I'll be honest. I think for CJ, this is the best thing for him to make mistakes at the line of scrimmage, to make the wrong calls. Now he can see, okay, next time it comes up, I'll make the shift to the right or the shift to the left, or, hey, we're going to switch to this play. Because last year he had no command. He couldn't change anything. So now with him being able to see it, him making a few mistakes here and there, or him having success with it, now he can be on top of it. Now he can talk to the receivers in the slot and say, hey, look out for this route, or, hey, if the safeties are stacked, he's coming, choice route coming your way, or a hot route. It's just so much that can help him. I'm excited for it all. So there will be bumps in the road. I think we need to understand that, hey, new offensive coordinator, never called plays before in a game. We got to understand it's going to be some bumps in the road with Nick. Going to be some bumps in the road with CJ. But this is what you want to help the true development down the road, right? I think this is it's like almost perfect setup because he had more command. Now he can self-correct himself, even during the game, self-correct himself. I see this look again, I'm gonna make sure I make this decision and not that one. So I think it's awesome.
I'm excited about it. I'm excited to be doing this podcast with you, Cecil. We're going to do this at least twice a week, Mondays and Wednesdays. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube, I'm in Eugene, Oregon right now. I had some business I had to attend to, and I'm hoping to join the team in West Virginia next week during training camp out there.
Nice.
But I drove around all day yesterday finding a suitable Wi-Fi, and I found a McDonald's in Eugene that has ridiculously fast Wi-Fi, and all I have to do is buy an Egg McMuffin every couple hours or so. Doing my radio show from here. I can't do a radio show at 4 a.m. Pacific time from a hotel room or an Airbnb because there are neighbors, and when I do radio. When I do radio, it sounds like I'm in some kind of a domestic dispute or something. So I can't be dealing with a popo while trying to do a live read. Yeah. So next time, or at least next week, I'll probably be in my studio or out at training camp or something like that.
There you go. It was fun, Seth. It was fun.
All right, man. We'll see everybody Wednesday. Everybody take it easy.